too loud, too loud. So, whose idea was it to have it in air condition instead of being out on the road, huh? Let's hear it for that, whoever was that decision maker. I do want to just thank all the residents for coming out for just to get some information on the force main as well as the recent air test. I do want to recognize our council people here, Charlie DePiro, Miriam Cohen, Terry Van Zura, Rupa Siegel, and Betty Schneider, for just, again, thanking them for their support, their financial support, obviously, for the force main, which was very important. We've, come a long way since we last met. I hope you have all been kept an eye out on our website, trying to provide as much information as possible. But because we're at that threshold now, we thought it was important to get together for a little FaceTime and a little rapport with each other. Probably what we're going to do is we'll have a brief report from Joe Stroin on the force main, and then we'll have Bahram talk about the air test till maybe about 6:30 or so, and then maybe we'll open it up to questions for your support. So again, the decision for the force main, we thought it was important for the safety of the residents. Even without the support of DEP, we thought, again, could not let that happen again. We've made some good progress with that. We also promised to do some air testing, which occurred. Again, this is just the first of perhaps two tests that we're going to do. I hope the information that you get tonight, as well as the questions and the answers, will help you process as we move forward. Again, ultimately getting the force main, no leachate in the system, no more trucking, and then hopefully we'll keep moving forward with that. So without any further ado, I'd like to call upon Joe Stroin. You all know him in regards to what we're doing now with our force main and the update. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. I might, when I do a little show and tell, I might put this microphone down. I think I can speak pretty loudly, but if I can't, please, they might not hear me on the live stream. Okay. What I'd like to do is, this has been a long and challenging project, I think, as all of you know. Our challenge was focused on public health and safety, and at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we minimized any disruptions at all to our residents, as well as try to maximize the efficiency of the design so that we can get the design accomplished as quickly as possible and at the least cost, at least at this particular time, to the residents. So what we came up with was and what made this really extremely difficult was that we are using double wall pipe to make sure that if there is a leak, none of that will ultimately get into the ground and or groundwater. And I'll show you examples of the pipe that we're using, because our original focus was we were going to get an actual manufacturer who does manufacture double wall pipe, but the lead time on that was extremely long. We couldn't live with it. It was almost 7 months before we were actually going to receive the material itself. So collectively, the township, our design team, as well as the contractor, came up with a very innovative idea to be able to accomplish the same thing at less cost and a much quicker delivery time. And the other thing that we wanted to do to minimize disruption and to speed up the process was to go with horizontal directional drilling. Now that essentially is a pipeline that's installed totally underground, And that's the reason why we actually did a number of test pits throughout the route of the force main, because we wanted to make sure that all of the other underground utilities that were in the public right-of-way were not going to be negatively impacted. And the other thing that we wanted to make sure of is that we didn't want any air release valves, because our goal was that this leachate would not see the light of day until it actually ended up at the Middlesex County Utilities Authority, where we were going to obviously have it treated and processed and ultimately disposed of. So what we had to do was do a contour such that there was no high spots. And that made it even more difficult, because when there's a high spot, you tend to get air in and you have to release that to make sure that there's no overpressurization. So I am pleased to say that if you look here, and again, everyone can, I know that these are small, but we wanted to at least make them available and everybody could come up and look. We're about 2/3 of the way done with the actual installation of the force main. We've gone down Lonnie, we've made the left-hand turn onto Laurie, we've gone through that little trail and path that linked up to Carnegie. We went down Carnegie, made the right-hand turn onto Spotswood Gravel Hill, and we're right here at Benny. And tomorrow we are going to make the preparations to go ahead and do this final leg between Benny and Avenue K, and then we're going to obviously proceed down there. This is about 1,000-foot length, and with horizontal directional drillings, the only openings are a send pit and a receive pit. So they actually dig 2 pits, again, depending upon the slope that we have to achieve when we actually drill the pipeline. And this is going to be probably 1,000-foot pull. They're going to do 1,000 feet of pipe in one pull. They actually do a drill that actually reams the path out probably 3 times, and then they hook this, and I'll just show you, this is some pretty hefty pipe. This is the casing. They actually, this is a 10-inch casing. It's about 1 inch thick, and this is to prevent any leakage from actually entering into the ground. It's fused. And this fuse right here is done electrically. This is stronger than the actual pipe itself. And then this is the carrier pipe that is actually, we cut it in half so that you can see the fuse. This is 6-inch carrier pipe. This actually goes inside that casing, and this is what's actually going to carry the leachate all the way to the pump station at Middlesex County's treatment facility. So that's essentially where we are. And again, I am very pleased with the way that the contractor and the design team have been progressing. And we're optimistic that sometime in September this will be completed. The next piece of the puzzle, and that's reflected over here. And again, I apologize for the small drawing, but you can take a look, is our pump station. This is a pump station that's been designed pretty robustly. We have 2 independent pumps. They're controlled by VFDs. We have a generator. We have a system whereby we can actually, if we have those pumps and that generator fail, we can bypass the entire system. Our utility department can actually bring in a diesel-powered pump, and we can go ahead and pump around that. I don't anticipate that would ever be necessary, but again, we plan for all those things because this whole design, force main and pump station, had to be submitted to the DEP for a sewer system extension project, and that permit is still being reviewed by the DEP, and we anticipate their approval of that relatively soon. We're working, there's this property, ironically, is owned by BFI Republic, who is the entity that has been maintaining and operating the landfill since its closure as a Superfund site. And what we're trying to negotiate with them, and we've been doing this for the last 4 months, is a construction easement, which is an easement on their property that will allow us to actually construct this pump station, and then that shrinks to a permanent easement, which is necessary for us to operate and maintain the equipment that we will own, so that we won't have those maintenance issues that were obviously prevalent when the leachate was being discharged into the gravity sanitary sewer system. We're optimistic again that the easement will come to fruition this week, or hopefully within the next week. Our lawyers have made some great progress, the township attorney, and we're very optimistic about that. I've been mentioned to a couple of you during the course of just pre-meeting that one of the biggest issues that is affecting any industrial construction project is supply chain issues. And the biggest component that we're finding, because we're also building Well 25, which is on the corner of Spotswood, Englishtown, and Matchponics. That's a $9 million project. And we ordered electrical switchgear last September, and it's not going to be delivered until this November. And we're finding out the same thing, because even though we don't have an easement, we should have started construction theoretically 4 months ago. We are working on getting shop drawings approved and ordering equipment, especially those things that we know are long lead times. So we are working really hard to expedite anything that we know is a long delivery time. So as soon as we get the easement, we'll be able to jump in. And as the mayor has done and as we have done as a township, we'll keep all of you apprised of exactly where we are on schedules. I know it's critically important. It's very important for us, and we're really excited to see the day, and we'll have some sort of a ribbon cutting ceremony or whatever when we actually start putting leachate into that system, and trucking goes away, and from a public health and safety standpoint, that issue will be behind us. One of the other key things that we're actually making sure happens this time is that, as you know, all we're doing is taking leachate flow from the actual landfill itself. That's being generated by BFI Republic. They control all of the equipment and assets that currently generate and discharge that leachate into our pump station. We are making sure through a separate maintenance and operations agreement that we have the ability to have remote readout of every single asset that they have there, so that when they, or if they, have any equipment malfunctions like they did that caused this problem back in September of 2020, we'll be able to quickly identify it and make any operational changes that we need to make, and also make sure that BFI adheres to their responsibilities. And that'll either be by us calling them directly, but as well as we'll be making sure that the regulatory agencies are aware of it as well, specifically DEP and the EPA, because DEP is the head regulatory agency overseeing this landfill, and we've been really pushing them to make sure that they hold BFI Republic accountable for their operational and maintenance responsibilities. So I'll be more than happy to take any questions from any of you during the course of the meeting after Bahram gives an update on his air monitoring report, which I know you're interested in hearing about as well.
Thank you very much. Just a little bit of history how we arrived at here. As all we know, the landfill has been closed and under EPA and NJDP. In 1993, EPA ROD is the controlling document, and BFI is doing the monitoring and annually and reporting to DEP and EPA. As far as the air quality, limited air quality monitoring study that we did, before I get to that, as Mayor indicated, right, we fought hard to not to reintroduce this leachate into existing sewer line. There were reports that we reviewed, and we put a rebuttal on it, and our technical review was submitted back in August 2021. And with township and mayor's initiatives, as Joe just stated, the dedicated force main is under construction. Again, quoting what Joe said, the leachate that gets into that pipe will not see a daylight throughout the properties here, which is a good thing. So there were on and off complaints, obviously, from the residents, and township asked me to prepare a limited air quality monitoring. This was when I met with the residents here back. I mean, it's not an easy study, and in fact, it is up to township that, bearing that cost to go ahead and do this limited study even on the first event. We prepared a plan, air monitoring plan, was reviewed by the township. We also submitted that to the DEP. We got their input. This was April and May, early May. And we set up this 24-hour real-time monitoring on May 16th. Now, fortunately, BFI stopped their operations that day. We just caught up on next day when we came back to collect the equipment. On Tuesday morning, we just caught up the tail end of it a little bit. So we set 4 stationary monitoring locations along Lannis Street and Lower Street, right in front of where the operations are taken care of, right in front of, at the perimeter of the landfill that, the residents complained more. We had to literally align the weather conditions to initiate this, this monitoring. It requires a decrease in barometric pressure, and also wind directions and wind speed. So, renting all those equipment, it was a task. Well, we were able to successfully conduct this monitoring program on May 16th and May 17th. In addition to stationary points, we also had handheld equipment. Our personnel walked through the site at the perimeter and took some readings. The samples that collected over 24 hours, we call them composite samples, were shipped to certified laboratories to analyze for parameters that are expected to come as a fugitive emissions from the landfills, typically. For volatile organics, we call them TO-15, and another couple of other parameters that are related to landfill. So this landfill is closed, has the cap. We can talk about it however long we want. But like any other landfill, there will be some fugitive emissions. So because of the complaints, so township wanted us to check what's going on there. So just imagine in this time length, one day continuous monitoring is just one shot. That's all we did. We just took at that particular time, particular date, and then looked at the results and tried to analyze them to make some sense out of it. So there are some detections on the volatiles and some mercaptans, but all of which are below the applicable limits. We compare them to indoor air quality standards because they are more stringent standards. So nothing jumped at us. However, we did get some fugitive, some detected contaminants that typically attributable to the landfill. Again, it is not easy to control the wind, right? Once you set up your documents, wind do change its direction. So we also set up one upwind location. So one or two parameters also we saw in the upwind location. That could be wind effect, and that could be ambient air quality. So township is planning to prepare another one, ask us to do another one, so we don't know when we're going to do that. Again, this was an initial monitoring. Whatever we have seen, we'll try to use that knowledge when we go back into the field second time. One of which that comes to my mind, perhaps the upwind location, we'll set it further away. I think it was about 500 feet away, southerly edge of the landfill. Perhaps we could set that up further away. But again, it's New Jersey. It's an area, the ambient air quality, you will always have something in it, right? We don't have a pure air. So we were trying to manage that and correlate that upwind versus downwind and try to understand what's actually coming out of the landfill. So all in all, there's nothing that jumped at us. I don't think there's anything to be, to be concerned about, simply comparing those limited data to the indoor air quality standards. I will just leave it at this point, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
And Param
And Joe.
will answer, and they'll repeat your question because there's a couple of people watching on the internet. So I'll call on people. I'll go with Karen and then Mike, no particular order. Well, you'll repeat their question. I think
See.
Are there New Jersey air quality or EPA quality?
If you repeat the question, or I can try to get to.
Sure.
If you can
I
repeat
guess the question was, are there any NJDEP or EPA air quality standards? One that we took with is the New Jersey indoor air quality standards. Again, the reason that we took that, it's more stringent. So we compare them and there was no exceedances. Everything was below the threshold. I'm not aware of I think there might be something with EPA coming up, but I'm not aware of that as of yet.
Right, is if this works. Before I hand it over to Mike, I would also say, Bahram, that you and Joe sent this to the DEP and the EPA to review as well, who is the oversight agencies that does that level of review as well as the regulatory agencies. Can you hear me okay on this? Okay, great. I'm gonna move to Mike now. We have a roving mic.
Here's the mic. Yes, question. Yeah, what I ask, at this point in time, or maybe in the future, what's actually being done to minimize the generation of the leachate in the landfill? And I guess in a way, it kind of leads into a little bigger question. Yeah, I know you've been involved with taking a look at, the maintenance and operation of that landfill. Yeah, what other maintenance issues have actually been uncovered? Yeah, that may or may not have been, reviewed with the DEP, such that maybe, there's additional work that needs to be done.
Again, this is under the control of NJDEP. We had some interaction with DEP and EPA representatives and made some recommendations, but again, it's a closed landfill. We all know that, partially closed by clay and partially closed by soil. And then the reason at the time was that in areas where they didn't have the leachate collection enclosure, they put clay, they put other areas, they put regular soil. So I don't think we have any authority as a township to tell them that you didn't do a proper closure, or you should have used liner. Again, this landfill, we call it orphan landfill. It's prior to 1982 regulations, so that it did not receive a proper, I would say, like state-of-the-art engineering enclosures. Like if we close any landfill right now, definitely we put liners and whatnot on the top, so it totally encapsulate the waste. That's not how it is, but it's not up to the township or us. That was a decision that made by EPA back in 1993, and the monitoring is being done under the purview of NJDEP.
Yeah, I understand that, but going forward, I'm concerned that, this may be the tip of the iceberg. This one landfill here in Monroe Township, that it may be one of who knows how many sleeping dogs around the state of New Jersey that are going to become an issue going forward. And, ever since I guess this was raised as an issue here in Monroe, it kind of dawned on me, gee, yeah, so, they closed these landfills, what, 30 years ago? And all they could keep doing is coming out and doing a quick survey, review every 5 years. And I think probably more often than not, just saying, okay, you're good for another 5 years. Yeah, I know you yourself don't have the answer, but certainly some people should be asking those questions.
So there are annual reports, there are some quarterly monitoring, and compiled and submitted to DEP as an annual report. And then there's a compiled 5-year report that goes to EPA, just summarizes what happens in the past years. But there are annual reports that are going to DEP. Those annual reports are based on quarterly monitoring, whether it's the gas and leachate levels and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, Stan, 6C. James Browswell, I'm on Jennifer Drive. So reading through the report, I do agree with a couple things you said in there that more air monitoring should be performed. When we look at this and you look at the EPA reports, these review periods, kind of what Mike was alluding to here, there's a lot of, items below exposure limits, but there's a lot of materials from a consistency standpoint have not gone away. And it's more than just fugitive, right? With these kind of systems, you would expect over time, you would see a slow degradation, although we don't know exactly what was in the landfill, right? So we're getting a lot of byproducts of other constituents, right? All these in small levels, right? They may not have immediate impacts to health, but over time, they are impactful, right? So we're looking at now is I'd like to see more representative sampling, just like I would do with my workers working with chemicals, right? We typically do 9 samples per activity to have a representation of what they're actually doing. And I think, it's warranted to have more sampling of conditions, right? The barometer is important, but we need some of the other scenarios where, we get a rain event and then like yesterday, the humidity spikes, right? And what are some of these other conditions that, people are experiencing at all different times? We need to try to capture those kind of events so we have a real representation of what might be going on. A couple other things are mentioned is the O&M report still not evaluated. That did bother me a little bit based on the time that we weren't able to get that information and review it. When I look at some of the things, I know there was pushback from BFI before, but who's to say when they saw you putting up your meters to do the monitoring that they didn't shut down some of the operations, right? So we might
They did.
So we didn't get a true representation. Right?
Well, that was a leachate transportation operation. I
Right.
just want to qualify that.
Right. But just even with the gas, right? What is released periodically, right? We have the vents that are there. I want to look at the air permits. You said there's annual reports. I want to look at that data a little bit more. But just again, over time, a lot of these materials, they're not great solvents, right? Most manufacturers now are trying to replace a lot of these toluenes and other materials that typically aren't good for anyone. They're not good for our environment, right? We're trying to place with greener, safer materials, right? And that's what we should be looking at for BFI to do. Granted, this risk assessment on landfill was 30 years ago, right? And on that, it talks about the degradation, decay of material, and ability for kids to play on that ground one day, all right? I wouldn't put my goat on that ground, right? Just in the current state of things, right? And again, it's the uncertainty, right? Uncertainty drives fear, uncertainty drives more questions, and it can also drive panic. So what we really want to make sure is, we just keep pulling this onion back and we put the pressure on BFI to ensure everyone in the neighborhood's safe, every animal, pet, anyone visiting the area is safe, and definitely, keep the momentum going to get the trucks out in the neighborhood. They've slowed down, but they're not gone, right? And this is over a year now, all right, at a year that we've been dealing with this.
Correct. Just a couple of points I would like to make. Yes, landfills, the emissions from the landfills and biodegradations don't go away for 30 years, 40 years. All it does, the rate of generations, landfill gas generation will asymptotically will go down, but still it will produce certain contaminants. The site has 29 extraction wells, gas extraction wells. that is connected to a flare which operates intermittently. I don't remember exactly, but perhaps like 2 days on, 2 days off. The reason is that I deal with other sites, so the reason is that you don't have, when the extraction wells, well, the gas is pulled, it will pull it out, and if there's no enough gas, this flare is not going to work. So they just operate it when there's enough gas. There's also perimeter probes, gas probes. Those are quarterly being monitored again and reported to DEP. So we had, I believe, 2019 or 2020 annual report. We look at those. So the methane levels and other contaminants. So there are checks and balances there. And there's also the other thing that you mentioned, air permit. There's a valid air permit that flare is permitted. There are certain standards that they cannot exceed. If they exceed, they have to report to the DEP. So it is a landfill, and there is, no matter what it is, there will be still fugitive. Those 29 extraction wells, again, I mean, I don't want to make a determination here, but is it capturing everything that is being produced there? I don't know. I don't have those details, but it is an active system, what we call it, and it's being controlled by the flare. And the other point, I'm sorry, the other point is that, so unless there is a continuous monitoring, right? If an event occurs, say township receives a call, it's already too late to go after and set up something. I know we live with this for other landfills, operating landfills too. So I don't think this burden should be on the township. I understand the residents' concerns. I'm not minimizing that. But if anything, it has to come from the DEP, enforced by DEP and the EPA on the BFI. If that's a determination to put more like real-time monitoring rather than waiting for an incident to happen and try to chase after that.
During the testing that you did, was there any odor complaints during that time frame from the residents?
I don't think so, and I checked with my field guys. There were no olfactory odors. They did not. I mean, trusting their noses. So.
So a couple residents couldn't make it tonight. They may be watching on the live stream, and they did email a couple questions. So I just want to try to get them in as well. So Bahram, this is for you. It has to do with the conditions during the air quality test. So this resident says, I clearly remember that day, and it was very windy, and I would say it was more than 15 miles per hour, and it also rained on and off that day. So do those factors have anything to do with the impact on the test results?
So I double checked. The wind did not go over 10 miles per hour, so it was below the threshold that we set it up. Atmospheric, again, barometric pressure was within the range and decreasing range. We did our best. I think it, whatever we collected should be representative of that day.
Hi, thank you. So I'm really not an expert on how this system works. So I'm hoping you can help me understand a bit more. So where the pipes go along and terminate on Avenue K, from Avenue K, they go into a pump station? Where,
Yes, when the leachate will be collected, obviously within the landfill's collection system, and then discharged into the pump station that is going to be owned and operated by the township. That's going to be right here at essentially the base of the landfill on property that is owned by BFI that we're negotiating that easement on. This is the pump station. That pump station will then pump it approximately 8,500 feet along this route and it'll discharge, again, without seeing the light of day, into our pump station number 6, which is the largest sanitary pump station within the township. There's approximately 4.5 million gallons on average that goes through that pump station on a daily basis, as opposed to probably about 60,000, 70,000 on average gallons of leachate that are generated each day at the landfill, again, depending upon your average rainfall and a bunch of other things. So that's what'll happen,
So once it goes to that pump station on Avenue K,
right?
it then is pumped to a treatment facility?
Yes,
And
it
is
is.
it a similar closed system where there's no chance of it?
Absolutely. It's pumped in a 30-inch force main that goes from this pump station all the way down to Middlesex County in Saraville. And that's where they actually treat all the sanitary, not only from our township, but several other townships. They treat close to 130 million gallons a day.
Okay. So it's the same type of system that you just showed with the double pipes and,
No, that's not a double pipe on that force main. Obviously, there's a lot of dilution that will take place because this is just dedicated leachate, but it is a force main, doesn't see the light of day. There's no issues. It's probably 2 microphones. Yeah.
okay.
Any
So-
other questions?
So there's no concern from it getting from the landfill to that pump station, and similarly, no concern, because it sounds like there's a double pipe system to help prevent anything from leaking along the way. But it's, I guess, the same concern when it gets to the Avenue K pump station to the treatment facility. No issue?
No.
There's no concerns?
No concerns. And just so that you're aware, as I mentioned, and again, we did this to be extra careful because it's just pure leachate, 100% leachate, undiluted. There's an annular space between that casing and this carrier pipe, and we have leak detection monitors in there that actually will detect if there is any leakage so that we can go ahead and make repairs on that. And all of that comes back to our SCADA system, which is a remote supervisory control and data acquisition system that records data. And quite frankly, that was the system that pointed to BFI a number of the issues that they had back in 2020.
All right, thank you. And do you know when the construction is going to be done on Avenue K, if that's going to impact the school with busing?
We're, again, trying to make sure that this leg will be completed within the next week, based again on the schedule. And then this is going to probably be maybe 2 or 3 poles. There's going to be a big pole along here. They're going to use the same machine that they're doing this 1,000-foot. So I'm optimistic, and they're trying to get this done from a road closure and/or disruption standpoint before school starts. That's what they're trying to shoot for.
Yep, this is a quickie for Joe. Joe, what kind of pipe is that? Yeah, that we're looking at, the black pipe?
That's high-density polyethylene, HDPE.
Okay, good.
And the casing's about 1 inch thick, and the carrier pipe is about 3/4 of an inch thick, and it's robust for the materials that it's carrying.
And I assume there's some kind of a spacer, I guess, between the 2 pipes?
Yes.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. And can I ask one other question? This is going to be a tough question. Now, at the northwest corner of Monroe Township, there's something called the JIS landfill. And I just want to mention it because with the review that our consultant made of the BFI landfill, there were a number of inadequacies that were found. And I'm wondering, based on what was found with the BFI landfill, should there actually be maybe a review made of that JIS landfill? And I might add also, in fact, you folks probably know better than I do. I know it's near the northwest corner of Monroe, might be in Cranberry, but nonetheless close enough that it could affect the residents. South Brunswick, I'm sorry. That's it.
I had a question in reference to the studies that you've been doing for us at the BFI, any recommendations that they should be doing on the landfill itself? I know we talked about the collection system that they have, an overflow system, the landfill not having a liner. Are you going to give us recommendations on what in order to maintain that landfill so we can keep our residents safe and make sure that there's no runoff coming from the landfill? Because I think with your study, we should have some recommendations that BFI should be doing and to maintain it, and so this doesn't happen again.
So all we could, I mean, I had the site visit, I believe once or twice. All we could do is just go through their monitoring reports that all that stormwater management, landfill gas, and leachate collection system properly operating. And I don't have any information otherwise, that they're all in operation. Again, it's under the DEP's jurisdiction. They're monitoring it on behalf of EPA, and they're sharing that information with the EPA too. So I don't think township can step in, and even if I go there and find something deficient, right, I don't think township has that jurisdiction to step in and force them into. I mean, township can speak for themselves. I mean, it's very difficult. They won't. BFI will not accept it. And going back to technical review that I had for the leachate reintroduction of the leachate system, I mean, we got stiff resistance from both EPA and DEP, never mind just the BFI.
I understand, but what we put into our sewer system, we do have a say. What goes into our sewer system, they just can't pump into something that's not acceptable to MTUD and also to MCIA. So I'm just concerned that, like, they don't have generators, and all of a sudden it builds up, and then our pump station is overloaded, and there's a situation where maybe it spills down their paved driveway now that they have, and there's issues of an overspill. There's a system that needs to be in place. I'm just asking if there's a recommendation, because
Sure.
this is
So whether it was being sent through the sanitary sewer line, or it's going to go to the pump station, dedicated force main, it has to meet MCUA's discharge limits. There's a permit. MCUA is monitoring that. So that's one. Second, if anything, the dedicated force main and pump station here will operate, is capable of operating with a generator if anything happens to power. So definitely this system is going to improve the leachate. Leachate collection itself is going to be controlled by BFI. And don't forget, landfill will act as a reservoir, right? Just if you don't even pump for a day or two, nothing is going to come out of it. What mistakes were made, what I understand, was that how they transported that leachate, and there were some spills in the managing of the leachate and transportation. So as long as that leachate comes into the underground storage tank and the pump station here, that system has been designed as, state of the art, as Joe was elaborating. You deal with the TWA permit with NJDP, all the backup for the backup system generators are there. So I don't see any problem as long as the leachate comes down the hill, which it will, and it will be properly transported to MCUA with their discharge limits.
Okay, thank you.
in place.
Last question I had for Joe. The TWA, how many gallons is that per day in the 24-hour period? How many, the permit that we requested for TWA from DEP?
It's a system extension permit for the sanitary sewer system. Yes. And again, the great thing about this, Councilman, is that we're designing this, we're owning and operating it. They didn't have a functioning meter, as you know. We're going to have our own meter. That's what's going to monitor exactly what is coming into our pump station and discharging. So because we didn't have an accurate reading when we designed it, what we ended up doing was looking at their reports, and their reports said that they generated about 10 million gallons of leachate a year on average. We found that when they were doing trucking, they did 10 million gallons in 6 months. And ironically, what we have found, because as you know, when that leachate was discharged into our sanitary sewer system going through Inwood Estates and then ultimately to our other major pump station within the township, which is Ashmall, we have now compared the flow rates being discharged out of Ashmall, since nothing from the BFI landfill is going into that, and we're seeing that you know, there's close to between 10 and 12 million gallons a quarter that is dropped out. So the pump station is definitively sized easily to meet those requirements, though, because we had an inkling that that was what was happening. Sure.
I'm gonna go to her first, and she'll pass it.
Hi, I just have two questions. The pump station, when it's finally up and operational, Monroe is going to be running that.
Yes.
So if we have questions or concerns or there's malfunctions, we can go right to the town and not have to, we can bypass BFI. Is that any kind of conflict of interest in terms of their other maintenance of the landfill?
No, and that's the reason why I mentioned in my brief discussion with you guys at the opening of the meeting, there are a number of assets on the landfill that they operate, maintain, and those assets really are contributory to actually feeding into this. In other words, their leachate collection system that goes around the entire perimeter of the landfill, and their pumps and their underground storage tank, and the automated controls that they have on pump stations actually located in the landfill proper. Those are all maintained, owned, operated by BFI. And I want to make sure that I have remote readouts so that if I see that steady state operation or, you know, normal operations aren't being done, which is what we actually provided them with our remote SCADA readouts to show them that they had equipment failures back in 2020. We have to maintain that as well, because if all of a sudden their leachate stops flowing, I don't want anything negative to happen to our pump station so that we ruin our equipment.
Okay, and then from the sketch, it looks like this pump station is going to be very close to where the gate is, like by the side of the road.
No, it's actually going to be, if you look at the fenced-in area where they actually have their underground storage tank, we're putting it as far up to the trees as possible. And the other thing that I want you guys to understand is that from a noise standpoint, everything is underground.
Okay, that was my other
Yeah,
question.
we are not, the pumps and the motors, they're all 20 feet underground. You're not going to be hearing anything, because we wanted to make sure all that was done. The only thing that might have a small noise, if it ever happens, is if we lose power and the automatic generator kicks in, but we've already sized that so that we're going to have the decibel level at street level well within the township's noise ordinance. And again, hopefully JCP&L will be able to get power back on quickly so we don't have to run that generator. It's going to be a natural gas generator.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually live on Michelle Street, so I want to thank Councilman DePiero because he really got the ball rolling on all of this. And I also want to thank Mayor Delina because he's also stepped forward to try to remediate this situation. Number one, are we owning the land as well? Is that what's part of the negotiation where this pump station is being built, or is that still going to be owned by BFI? When do you expect, I know we have delays in just materials. When do we think that station is actually going to be built? And then I guess the last part is, and I want to thank my neighbor James, because he really articulated well all of the concerns, right? If we're getting inaccurate reporting on the amount of leachate that was ever coming out of it, and I just think about the grandfathering and, like, you know, I'm told I can't grandfather anything. I couldn't sell my house with asbestos in it, right? Then we're not going to grandfather that in. How are we, like, kind of saying, well, this was capped 30 years ago with inferior technology, and we have on a daily basis, we don't have enough no, fragments. I apologize. I forget what the term was, but you know, the escapees. I apologize. Fugitives. That's it. I know we get there somewhere. You know, Harrison Ford, right? Harrison Ford's running around somewhere, right? We have the fugitives out there, but it's not a one-day thing. And how are we checking? Really, it sounds like we need to have constant monitoring, and I probably needs it at all landfills, but I'm concerned about the one that happens to be close to my house, and that's directly impacting my family and the families of my friends and neighbors. So are we doing anything about that on a more constant monitoring basis? Because it sounds like we just have a lot of unknowns, and I recognize I'm not asking the township to cover the costs, but it almost sounds like the DPW or DP, excuse me, and the EPA are like dragging their feet, and they should be held accountable because they are government organizations and they should be doing everything they can to support us. So I know there's a lot of things in there. So one, are we owning the land for the pump station? 2, when do we expect it to be built? And then 3, what is the ongoing mitigation monitoring that we're going to do and the pressure that we need to do? And we'll all help. That's how we got here to begin with. It started with meetings in front of the rec center because we were in the middle of COVID. But that's how we got here, because there were enough people that made a stink, pardon the pun. But if we need to push forward with the EPA and the DEP, like, let's do it, because we have a lot of young kids in the neighborhood, and we want to make sure that they grow up healthy.
I'll answer the question relative to the easement. As I mentioned, there's a construction easement which is temporary, and that's going to allow us to utilize land owned by BFI to actually construct the pump station. Then there's actually a permanent easement that is actually a little bit larger than the footprint of the pump station itself, and that'll be deeded to the township permanently for us to, obviously own and maintain. And as it relates to, if we can get this easement going, we can start construction. The big thing is on the delivery of the long lead turn items, and as soon as we find out what those schedules are, I'll be able to post something on the website as to what the schedule would be.
So you're not making any ballparks right now because of the uncertainty?
Yeah, the uncertainty of those electrical pieces of equipment, the switchgear, the VFDs that we have on the pumps and everything else. I do know that the generator's out a year, but we've made provisions so that we can actually plug in one of our portable generators that we have at the utility department if we need to be able to supplement that until the actual permanent generator is delivered.
I guess the question was how much proactive as a resident we can get and force EPA and DEP to change the monitoring schedules or additional monitoring. And again, we have no power on that, right? This landfill, according to EPA and DEP, was properly enclosed. And there are checks and balances such as active extraction wells and perimeter monitoring probes. And are there fugitives? There are fugitives. If, again, DEP is DEP, if they wanted to force them to do what we call a surface emission monitoring, we cannot do that. We cannot enter their landfill and take measurements unless it's mandated by DEP and then conducted by BFI. That's the only thing I could think of at this point.
But there seems to be evidence that they didn't close it or cap it properly, or else we couldn't be here now. So how does EPA and DEP stand on that?
So I'll jump in on that. And I'm Alan Weinberg, Township Manager. As you may remember, last July, and it's something we can continue to revisit, they sent us a letter saying that everything is completely protective of public health. And we all sort of got that letter from the commissioner saying everything's perfectly fine. As we know, and as the mayor knows, and as the council knows, things weren't fine when the leachate was coming up into people's homes through an open sewer system. So the mayor and the council took the initiative with the help of the residents to say, let's fix this right. We think, according to Bahram and most people, a force main is the safest way to encapsulate that so air doesn't come in. And we've basically been on our own now for a year and a half, sort of handling that, with DEP not even recognizing, that we're sort of taking the leadership on that because they keep saying it's protective of public health. So I don't want to speak for them because I'm not a fan. I mean, not to put that out there, but that's been their position, as many of you know. And I see the mayor getting up, so I better give up the microphone before I lose my job over here.
That also calls into then who do we need to hold accountable that could put that pressure on?
Yes. So we the game plan, right? We all know the game plan, and there's parts of it because we want to start at the 20-yard line and we want to get down to pay dirt. Okay. So great progress, right? And then when we turn it on and it's going, then what's next after that? We got the first down. Let's go for the touchdown. So, and I do want to recognize our state assembly, Wayne D'Angelo as well. What's next is advocation and education. So we educate ourselves by testing, just to know what are we doing? What are we asking for? We want safety and security. If there's fugitives, particulates, whatever you want to call them, if there's an issue with that, then we have the ammunition by doing the testing and then educating the DEP. But we need the hammer, right? We need that hammer to get it over the goal line. And that's where we're going to have to advocate the governor's office, with our state representatives, with all of the three-letter words that we can get, EPA, DEP, to recognize, hey, you know what? Please take a look. Something is askew. When we first started this, there's no way I was going to allow leachate back into a sanitary sewer. I mean, come on. That should have been done a long time ago. I couldn't put that back in. And we're still getting pressure to put it back in. It's still happening. They're still asking for it. It's not gonna happen. This is what we want to do. We have to stay resolute. We have to follow that game plan, and it's with the help of you, our state representatives, our council members, and our professionals that we can get to that point. So we'll have the last comment.
Well, I don't know if I should have the last comment, but recognizing the delays in government, with all due respect.
No.
And I work in city government. I work with city governments all the time.
My condolences.
Yeah, thank you. I love the idea that we want to take the plan in their stages, and this is this stage. But if we're not starting to advocate now and wait until the system goes online, like this conversation's taken us almost 3 years. It'll be over 3 years from initial complaint, potential permanent solution. And I just think about, I should be caring about my life as well, but I think about my children, the children that are on the bus stops every day, very nearby, that how I can't wait 3 more years to kick up the bus, or kick up the bus when this is done. 3 more years later, maybe something will be done at that point. We don't know what we've exposed our families and our neighbors to. So that's why, whatever can be the next phase, maybe it's a little quieter. Let's start.
Yep, I agree. Oh, okay.
You just mentioned, so Senator Greenstein, you're hearing that you're hearing the voice of the people. Did you go to the next week? So we can come back. Question.
You've been at meetings with the journals. And the mayor decided to obviously on TV does not agree. They've done whatever they get hurt. They don't. So push that. In the end, they haven't hurt us. That right? Us and doesn't. Mayor wants to protect the just I'm afraid. But I'm thinking of taking role, looking beyond just this. I'm on the vice chair. I'm thinking of taking a look at this in our on the largest. The other issue, and tapping that was done on the land years ago, that was right past that period.
That's a Bahram question?
But, yes, it was.
At that time, yes.
Right now, not. Hopefully, force me. Many of you. Just listening. There's a lot of knowledge in this room, and I'd be happy to talk.
With that being said, what we'll do is we can talk amongst ourselves. I just want to thank again everybody, anyone who was watching on YouTube, and again obviously just thank you for the residents for being here, for the council members or state representatives, but especially our administration as we work together on this. Thank you so much.